don't talk too much with about the general public. So the only sort of question which you may see
So now you should see yourself, and we are live right now. Hopefully,
awesome. Okay, sir. Over to you, man.
okay
I'm
then.
gonna yeah.
Okay, guys. Hey, guys, welcome to the next episode of Let's Talk. This is episode 5. So today we have a special guest, Rahul, with us. He's the founder of BimaPe, and he's like one of the most budding startup founders. So today we'll be talking about how to get into startups and how to cause disruption, and he's the right person to get to him because right now his company is making disruption in the in this insurance domain. So we directly get to him. Let's hear from him, like what his journey has been so far, how he came this way, etc., and then we'll start with our questions. So yeah, over to you, Rahul. Yeah, here you go.
Awesome, Ankit. Thank you for having me on the show. So I still don't know whether we're disrupting anything, disrupting anyone, but we're trying to do our small part as a 7-person team. But maybe I'll give that quick background about me as a person. So started out in my sort of career thinking I'll become an actuary. So it's one of those guys who do a lot of the mathematics behind insurance companies. I studied in the UK, went to University of Warwick, did a degree in statistics there. So I know there's this whole thing going on about you don't need a college degree, etc., etc. But I went down the route of doing a 4 years master's degree, a proper STEM graduate, write code. I've been inside the machine of two large organizations. I think that's given me a pretty good perspective on where I don't want to work rather than where I want to work. But being in a larger organization also taught me how to run an efficient process on whether it's for recruitment, whether it's for building systems, whether it's understanding how you can get a company from point A to point B and point C and beyond. So I obviously learned a lot there, but I actually much prefer where I am today at the early stage. We're a team of about 7 people, but that's honestly where a lot of the fun actually takes place. So my career arc is fairly short. Moved back to India exactly coming up on about 2 months ago. And BimaPe is my first venture, hopefully the only venture I'll work on. But it's pretty exciting.
So yeah, definitely. That's great, man. Like your only venture is making a lot of noise right now. We can say because I was going through your website only, Bima Pay, and like it's really great, man. Because there is a lot of insurance and a lot of things we don't know of, and like we are losing on them. But like you are making people aware of it, and yeah, at least they can encash those opportunities that they already have available. That's a wonderful idea. Like I really enjoyed the experience I had. So like you were talking about, like you graduated from the university, etc. So let's start with the university, right? Like your university ranks 62 in the world. I've just checked, and like on QS it was on 62th position. So studying in such a great university, being in UK, then falling back to India to start a company. So when you decided that yeah, it's time for me to move back, and why, or some incident that inspired you, like what
Yeah,
exactly made you move back? Yeah.
it's definitely a fascinating one, right? And it's not just going abroad, studying at a good university, then ending up with a really good job, right? One of the fun parts of management consulting is if you get on the good sides of the company, then you have a pretty comfortable job. You're working 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., enjoying the rest of your day. But because of COVID, I was back in India between March and September, and I actually handed in my papers in September itself. I sort of began to think about all the aspects of finance that were broken for my family in India, right? And maybe staying in the UK, I had gotten so used to doing all of my finances on the mobile phone, that was the bank, the insurance, the credit card, the debit card, and everything, right? Including the forex transfers. But because I was back home in India, all of my family just piled a lot of the paperwork and stuff onto me. And I realized I could automate a lot of our finances, right? So whether it's the stocks and, the debt instruments, the credit cards, the bank account as well, that you'll be surprised there are reasonably good banks in India on the mobile. But what really sucked for me was insurance, right? And I fundamentally could not answer this question. What insurance does my family have today? When do I need to pay for our insurance? And a lot of other things. And I'd say what tipped me over is when I went through this process of making insurance claims for one of our previous domestic help at home. And he sort of met with unfortunate bike accident, passed away.
Okay.
And just since I had a lot of time on my hands, he had anyways done the claims work for him. But I said, let me try to be creative. Let me try to find where this guy actually has insurance. Ended up discovering a ton of these. And everywhere I went, right, the claims officer would say, Sir, I've never seen someone try to claim on this. I'm going to try to help you, but let's give this a shot. And that is what made me think, right? When you're trying to build a product in insurance, you go up against this glass wall that no one fundamentally cares too much about insurance. It's not an interesting product. It's not something which you can build a cred style experience or an IND money style gamified experience around, right? You have to lead with value and real value from day one, right? And that's also why we sort of began our journey at BimaPe with the Know Your Card product.
Mm-hmm.
And you can almost think of Know Your Card as a feature in the sort of broader set of offerings which we will come out with as a company over the next year or so. So Know Your Card is a great starting point. We also launched something called EDL insurance. So if you are an employee subscribed to the Provident Fund, you also get free insurance there as well. So what we've tried to do is establish our name as a company by saying, look, here's the insurance that you have, and we're now going to help you make smarter insurance decisions. That gives you a bit of an idea of what we're trying to do. But yeah, man, you have to go about it in a really sort of creative way, because in direct to consumer fintech, so whether it's the cred, the IND monies, the Zerodhas of the world, customer acquisition costs can absolutely kill a business, right? And the further out you push your first paid acquisition, the better your sort of longer term prospects are as a company. And that's really why we took this approach of saying, let's chase product led growth, which is not paying to acquire customers, not paying to get them into the door, but relying purely on the product, amazing people, intriguing them, and them sharing it with other people. So yeah, we do a bit of engineering where we post on different channels, we run a bit of content, the awareness by BimaPay. But at its core, right, if the product is not good, just no one is really going to care about what you're doing. And that's the approach we've taken, right? And I think it's something anyone can follow, right? It's a playbook. You just have to adopt it to the industry that you're in.
Exactly. So, Policy Bazaar is also something doing similar, I guess. Yeah, when I talk about insurance, like, because, before they came into market, like, I remember, doing insurance for my cars, etc. So, those used to be, a big problem. Like, you have to run, get it renewed, etc. So, they made it easy, they bring it online. So now, they already exist. How you plan to take on them? They are quite established. They were also a startup, I guess, around 2008 or 9. I'm not
Yeah.
sure about the year exactly, but like they did something like this. They, make those things easy for us. So how you making that even better? Like, because the product
Yeah.
that you have made, it makes things really simple. At least the way you're doing it makes things easy. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's definitely fascinating, right? And what Policy Bazaar, CoverFox, and a lot of the other slightly more established insurance startups sort of evolved in this era where you had to run almost like a call center operation to teach customers what to buy, what not to buy. And what we have noticed as a company is there's almost this generation of about 6 to 20 million Indians who've grown up in an era where they want to learn about finance. They are playing around with Zerodha, Upstock, Grow, IND Money, Cred, etc., etc. And that 20 million will probably become 50 million in the next 6 to 7 years, right? Every year you have at least 5 million graduates from top colleges in India going out into the workforce. And speaking to quite a few of them convinced us that today, if you are a finance power user or someone who aspires to be a finance power user in India, you have access to DIY tools for every aspect of your financial life, right? So, bank, credit card, stocks, mutual funds. The only aspect of your finance for which you do not have a DIY tool is insurance. And quite often, you not only need to give them that DIY tool, but this is also an audience which is inherently curious, which wants to learn beyond the surface level knowledge. So our approach is, let us give you, at least, even if we don't give you control, or at least get you to an illusion of control over the insurance that you have. And the way to do that is to build ground up, very lightweight infrastructure that can be delivered on the phone, right? So a lot of insurance platforms today are optimized for desktop display. They're optimized for you entering a phone number and then landing 10 to 15 phone calls. It is part of your business model, right? And you cannot uproot a business model when you're a pre IPO company, a Series C company, right? You're raising the money to execute or to double down on what is working for you. And our bet, which we're already starting to see play out, is can we take a fundamentally different approach there and capture a different audience? So a lot of our customers have honestly not bought from Policy Bazaar. They
Mhm.
happen to bump into insurance because their employers, agents sold them something else. Their parents told them to do something. So these are customers who are anyways trying to do insurance themselves by going to the carrier's website, right? The company's website and trying to buy directly. What Wedge is giving them is a much more powerful place to do all of that. And that's sort of work in progress right now for us.
Right, definitely. Yeah, I understand. Getting calls is something. It's good at times, but it can get annoying. Like if you are just browsing some insurance and you just start getting back-to-back repetitive calls. Even I guess that is something that disheartens the user to go forward with the insurance with that particular company or something. But what we can make out is that you guys are doing is that it's good for easy for big companies who have a dedicated team working to handle their insurance and everything, and they are able to accumulate all those things together. But you're giving this power with your app to a general user like me who can who want to manage their insurance, so they can simply go access your access your app and just simply just see what insurance they can do and which is better for them. So I guess this is what you're trying to do, right?
And actually you can take it two steps further, right? So right now today, every application or every company out there expects you to go there, key in your personal information. They expect you to go there, key in your banking data, share your healthcare data. Just like you had UPI democratize access to payments or payments data, you now have the account aggregator framework, which is the UPI for banking data, and you have the health stack, which is the UPI for healthcare data. Now,
Hmm.
as a company, one of our engineers has won the account aggregator hackathon, part of the
Okay.
founding team. And as a team, we've also won the health stack hackathon. So our fundamental approach, and this is what we tell people, right? What we're actually trying to build for you as a customer is a consumer-friendly digital insurance product on top of the India stack. So we're going to leverage everything from the Aadhaar e-sign, which is now possible with insurance products, to the UPI 2.0 payment rails, to the India stack's new elements like your banking data on account aggregator, healthcare data on health stack, to deliver something which you've never seen before in the insurance industry. The
Yeah.
obvious sort of question, the question for us really is, as we build all of this infrastructure, do you want to keep everything in house and only do direct to consumer? or do we want to go out and do business to consumer and enable every other fintech company to build a good insurance product experience on top of the stack that we're building in house? And that's obviously a great question. We do get a lot of interest from some of the larger fintech companies to partner, but since we're a very strong product company, right? It's a team of 6 engineers, one product person. Our ethos has always been, if you're looking to build a cracker user experience, you have to go out there yourself, burn your fingers talking and experimenting with customers you acquire with your sweat, blood, and money. And then anything you learn from there can be productized for business to business consumers. So it's a long journey, but what we're also seeing is very strong traction on direct to consumer. So I guess one of the interesting challenges you face at the early stage, especially when you are in a market like insurance in India, which is very hot, is different people will try to pull you in different directions, right? Including some of our investors who say you should explore business to business. There's some who say no, just do direct to consumer, just focus on growth and product. And I guess the only piece of advice that I'll give you is prioritize ruthlessly, right? So, right now, as a team, we've decided no emphasis on the B2B side, but we've also made this conscious architecture decision of having everything at microservices. And what this means for people who don't write code actively is you can move fairly painlessly from a direct to consumer to business to consumer operation. So
Mhm.
that's one thing I'd encourage every early stage founder to think about is how do you buy yourself optionality to pivot or to change your business model by engineering your tech stack and every other aspect of your organization. It's a, I mean, don't treat it like a science, it's obviously an art, but that's definitely one thing I've found to be very helpful, not only right now as a founder, but something I've also seen having been part of the ecosystem for about 2.5 years now.
Definitely. This is even important as well. Being ready. Being ready, with what you may face, because once the opportunity strikes, and if you have the things ready, you can definitely capitalize on it. So that's a generally good idea. And even based on what I understand, how your approach is, maybe today, there's a discussion that which way should you go, but maybe you guys, the way you're developing it, you may be an example for the other companies to follow. Maybe like today we see Teslas or electric cars doing the same. Like 5 6 years back, it was something people used to just imagine that we may have something like that, but today they are the must have. So yeah, definitely that looks good. So let's move on to the next question we have for you. Like you have a really good experience in accounting in UK, working with some of the great companies like Accenture and Laka. Then when you were working there and you thought, okay, I need to move on and start a company in this way, etc. So how was the decision? Like you were working in a really lucrative job, like that's a dream for many, right? That's a dream for
Yeah.
many, but then you decided, okay, now I'm going to move on. So how you made that decision? You might be somewhere confused, where should I go? So yeah, how you decided on that, this is the time I should move on. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a really good question. And I think the real answer to that is it varies basis sort of where you are in life, right? So for me, I was in this interesting situation where my mom needs my help back home here because we have old grandparents.
Okay.
And I realized after a point that, they've obviously put in a lot of effort to bring me up. I should be back home, be with them in what could be, the last 5 to 10 years of their life. So that obviously actually played a pretty big part in my decision making. But I also had that what I would describe as a try before you buy kind of experience over the pandemic, where I could work out of India, work remotely abroad. And I had a couple of conversations with people in the ecosystem. And what I really sort of came to a conclusion is that it actually makes sense for me, even if I don't want to do my own thing, to just come back to India, because some of the opportunities that I was getting access to here were not only more exciting, which is very important, they sounded more fulfilling, but they were actually working out to just as much money when you adjust for the cost of living. And that's probably one of the things that a lot of people don't talk of about abroad. But if you stay in a hub like London, San Francisco, New York, yes, you do get paid through the roof, but it's also because your costs are through the roof, right? So you
Yeah.
probably end up spending 40% of your post-tax salary on rent. This is very common, especially as an entry level sort of graduate or sort of team member. And that's really how the decision making worked, right? I think you have to try something, otherwise you'll never know. And the one thing I just say is the grass is always greener on the other side, right? So now I have 50 different friends of mine who are all emailing me once a week saying, should I also do the same thing? And my answer is you can't listen to someone to tell you whether or not the decision is right for you, because ultimately you're the one making the decision. And more so when you're running a company. So for me, there is no other person deciding whether or not we should hire someone, whether or not we should fire someone, whether or not we should double down on something. Yes, there's a data driven approach. Yes, you hear other voices in the company, and you should, right? You should listen to different perspectives, but ultimately you're making the decision, right? So you have to balance what you're hearing outside, which is that consensus view or the consensus sort of data coming in or that feedback, but you sometimes also have to make a conviction decision. And this is why I tell a lot of people, the earlier you start getting used to making hard conviction decisions with limited data, the better it is for you. And this is probably also one of the reasons why I see a lot of people who are previously investors at, venture funds going and launching their own companies, because you just learn how to make what are otherwise very, very hard decisions for people to make. So you just go in there, make it, right? So
No,
long
that's
answer.
great also, yeah. Like, either you take the decision, there will be two options, right? Either I just take a decision too early, or if I take just keep on waiting for it until the time goes, and, you should make it somewhere in the middle, and definitely you should take a decision. That's important. So, yeah, we have, some questions, I guess, in the comments. So, yeah, the first one is, how do you plan to improve the two-way communication between brokers and the insurance providers? So, yeah, what do you want to
Yeah,
say?
I think it's definitely a fascinating one, right? And this also depends on how you think of sort of two-way communication between broker and insurance company, because quite often a lot of insurance companies just like to keep the broker at arm's length, and they say, boss, you do whatever you want, we'll do whatever we want. And when I actually think of a partnership between a broker and an insurance company, especially when you're taking a very sort of tech and product heavy approach like we are, it becomes very important to have a two-way channel with your insurers, right? So even now, we're still getting our brokerage license, but we're very sort of committed to maintain a good relationship with the providers. And the reason for this is a lot of the integrations which we build would sometimes require an insurance company to go over and above what is their standard operating process. And until you can find a good internal champion who's typically like a VP or SVP level at these companies, you will never be able to push your agenda, your business through. So I feel a lot of brokers try to have this adversarial relationship with the insurance company, where they say, no, boss, we will take highest commission possible for every product possible. And I guess our approach is, look, you know what? We just want to take a flat percentage commission of every product we help you distribute to the membership base we're accumulating. And the main reason for that is I feel a lot of problems in insurance really stem from the fact that you as a customer do not know where the incentives of the intermediary lie. And that's one thing we're hoping to sort of change by being radically transparent wherever possible about how we're generating money. So even if you go now on our website, we've got a nice little section there which says, look, we're not making any money out of Know Your Card. We're not charging you. We're not selling your data. But yes, at some point, we are in the process of getting that license, and we will help you make an informed purchase. And I think where we would try to sort of differ from every other insurance broker or salesperson out there is everyone's very convinced, just a very focused on sales quota, sell, 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 sell. and they define it as an insurance sales, right? But an insurance sales is for the salesperson and for the company. But for us, the metric will be the number of informed purchases and the volume of premium we funnel through an informed purchase. And when you frame it as an informed purchase, you immediately have to start optimizing for driving that informed purchase, right? That is now putting the customer there and saying, okay, I need to help you purchase something. I'm not selling you something, but I also have to make sure it's an informed purchase. So the most difficult exercise for us right now as a company is talking to enough customers, hearing them, observing them interact with their policy, interact with us, to really be able to quantify what an informed purchase is. And that is probably an objective for us in the product organization for the next 3 to 6 months. So, long story short, is not an adversarial relationship, looking to help customers make an informed purchase, funnel the business to the insurance companies. So, the two-way street is always open, because we've also architected our sort of relationship with our customer as that of a membership group. So in the future, we would hope to offer them custom products which are only available to BimaPe members, right?
Yeah,
And
that makes sense as well. What actually we see also. We talk about these tech giants like Google, Microsoft. What they do, they make a direct contact with their users. Like as a consumer, I use Google services. I can just go on the portal directly access it. There's no brokerage, nothing. So I have trust in the company itself. So when you make a direct contact with the customers, win them, then you they are fans of your company rather, and fans follow you wherever you go. So that's really a great approach. And we have one more question, like rather or two more. So yeah, do you feel any sort of pressure when you say you are building in public? Like what are the upsides and downside of building in
yeah,
public?
yeah, no, it's definitely a good one. And I think building in public has merits and also has a flip side, which is you could end up disclosing something you don't want to. And the approach I have always taken with the whole building in public thing is what I'm sharing, going to, first of all, is it going to add value to the lives of someone who's reading it? If no, straight away, do not post that piece of content, shut up and do your own work. The second criterion I apply is, okay, assuming we meet one, does this in some way or the other stand to help BimaPay as a company, as a brand, or any one of our products? Only if it's yes to both of these points do you sort of engage in this activity of building in public. So, first caveat is, if you are a business to business product where your buyer is, a CXO or a VP of engineering at a certain type of company, you probably do not want to build in public, right? The advantage of us being in direct to consumer insurance is anyone who meets this persona of a 25 to 40-year-old working professional wants to improve their financial awareness becomes a customer. Now, by default, this is the very audience that Twitter, LinkedIn aggregate for us, right?
Exactly.
So we know we're already on a channel where you are a potential buyer, you're a potential member. And the way we sort of go about it is, does it put pressure? Probably not, right? Because I think at some point you have to go about acquiring users, right? So building a good company is a function of team product distribution, right? Really simplifying it. But great team will build great product. That's a
Exactly.
given, right? A team that's improving will build a product that's always improving. But product distribution is never discussed, right? So you can have an excellent product, bad distribution, company is dead. You can
Exactly.
have a bad product, excellent distribution, you'll do all right. But when it's the magic really happens, and this is Andy Ratcliffe from Benchmark Capital, also founder of Wealthfront, who says it's when you bring this great product with a great markets, that's great distribution together, that's when the magic happens. And the way we go about seeing this is, when you're building direct to consumer, you have to straddle product distribution at the same time. And your distribution has to be proprietary and novel. And therefore, you do something that people are not comfortable doing. So I am very comfortable telling you how we go about recruiting, how we go about our creative process, because I fundamentally know it will not work for you. Because when you are an early stage company, it is all founder led momentum, founder led conviction. And this is why in a post earlier today, I said, success as a founder, as a founding team, is not how you respond to the moment when you're in the economic times or when a competition launches a similar looking product, right? But it's fundamentally how you conduct yourself for 90% of your time when all you're doing is sitting on customer calls, hearing the same shit over and over again, writing the same code day in and day out, trying to perfect it, trying to get marketing copy right. How you hold yourself in those moments really matters, right? So building in public really captures that 1% of the time where you're at your best, you're showing how you guys do stuff, but execution really trumps everything else, right? So you can copy everything we do. You have to first find a great team to do this, right? A team that has passion for their art, that
Exactly.
has this hunger to learn, a hunger to execute, and then discipline, right? Until you have that kind of team, you can't build the product. If you can't build the product, even if you have the distribution, you're in trouble. So building in public doesn't put any pressure, right? Because I actually see building in public as the new SEO, right? So in the
Hmm.
early days when you had to acquire customers, you'd go out there, write medium post, blog post, this, that, keyword optimization. In direct to consumer insurance, that is fundamentally not possible for BimaPe, right? I can positively tell you on this video cast that the SEO budget for some insurance companies is many times a multiple of the amount we have raised as a company. You can't compete against those guys, right? You go and check a clear taxes SEO strategy, that is out of this world, and we definitely do not even want to compete, right? If we could. So the way we think of building in public is the objective of SEO is to create content there that adds value, that funnels users back to your product. And we take that same SEO content strategy, value driven approach to the way we publish content on LinkedIn and Twitter, right?
Hmm.
Is it's slightly witty but very helpful for you as an individual, as a company, as a decision maker. So long story short is, does it put pressure on you, boss? Everything about running a company puts pressure on you, right? It just depends on how you respond to it.
Yeah,
And
so to this, like I had a question related to this only. Like we often hear Mr. Like we talk about Elon, he talks about that starting a company is like eating glasses and staring in the abyss. So the way you're explaining, do you agree with this? It is that hard, like walking in hell or something.
I think, and I guess the way I see it is a bit like the Gartner hype cycle, right? Every aspect of the company will go through the Gartner hype cycle, and you'll have this peak where you have expected inflations, a trough of disillusionment, plateau of productivity. And I think Elon's analogy is right for those shit hits the fan moments, and it happens to every company. Right? It happens to a company like us, probably happens every third day, right? Where everyone is panicking at 10 p.m., midnight as well. But I think that what a lot of people don't discuss is the 90% of the time, what I told you, right? Where you're sitting there writing code, talking to users, doing marketing copy. There's a lot of emphasis on that 9% of the time when shit really goes wrong, and the 1% of time when your story and the Ken write an article about you, right? But maybe Ken
Right.
writing an article about you goes to the 9%, which is bad. But most of your time is just like any other normal day job where you're sitting there on your desk doing work. So
More than
it's
normal days, like more than working in a company. Like if you are working for your own startup, you work
uh,
more than.
definitely, I think hours are definitely a lot longer, right? On average, I'd say I'm probably doing 7 a.m. to about 10 p.m. Monday to Saturday, and maybe taking a 2 hour sort of consolidated break across the day, right? So it's pretty intense, maybe 7 a.m. to 9. It's about 12-hour working day, 12 by 12 by 6 is about 72 hours. There are people in the team who put longer than that. There are people in the team who put less than that, right? But and the answer I can give you is you don't measure. So it's a bit like doing a PhD study or a master's thesis, right? There is really, you may have a defined outcome in mind, but getting to that outcome is a bit, of a journey of exploration, right? So you have to go left, right, up, down, zigzag. And sometimes the more time you spend, the more result you get. Sometimes the less time you spend, the faster you get there. But what you really want to do is you want to spend time on the company, but then get yourself away from the company at certain points in the day, so you can just forget the company and then suddenly have these moments of, light bulb moments, where you say, okay, we're now going to do this. And people laugh at it, right? People think it's absolutely crazy. But the best thing you can do as a founder and as a startup employee is identify when you reach a state of flow, right? And that state of flow is not only when you're doing work, but also when you're not doing work, where you're at your creative peak, right? So
Exactly.
for one of our staff members, it is going for that morning walk between 7 and 7:30. For me, it's the 1 hour in the gym between 1 p.m. and 2 p.m., right? Complete silence, no one is in the gym. I've got my headphones on. I'm listening to a podcast, right? Not even music. But there's a lot that you can get from what I call transfer learning, right? So you hear something in one domain, you get this one spark of inspiration from some cartoon doing something in a very, very different industry, and you apply it to your industry. So I can give you specific examples if you want. I'm fairly open minded about that. But the hours are difficult, the process is painful, right? But you want to just enjoy it as you go through. And that's why, going back to that product, the team product distribution, right? You
Exactly.
first want to get the team right. You want to make sure that team is right, because chances are you're going to go bottoms up with like a 90% probability. So
Right.
just enjoy the journey with them, make a few friends along the way. And if you find, the work environment is productive, you guys are creative as an organization, you're very likely to reach a successful outcome, right? Whatever success means for you. And it's mainly because most startups fail not because the product doesn't find market product fit, but it's because the team can't even get a product out, right?
So,
Because they
so what
have
do you what
conflict.
do you suggest on this? Like I have a question on this as well. Like, what are the main tasks of being, a starter or the founder is to handpick the team. So, how you manage to handpick those people you feel that they'll be important, because it's a common saying that first 15, 20 members of the
Yeah,
any company are the
yeah,
deciding factor.
yeah. So it's obviously a very interesting situation for me, where because of the COVID-19 pandemic, I had a fairly large pool of people whom I knew either from previous professional relationships, from personal relationships, or just purely off social media, people who I've been in touch with for over a year or so. So honestly, our first hire in the company is a person I've never met in person, and that's Kunal, one of our back-end engineers. But when you spend enough time with someone, getting to know them, having interacted with them for at least 6 to 8 months, you really understand how they operate as a person, how they think, what their motives are. The one thing I can tell you is your first, not even your first 20, right? Your first five hires probably determine where you go. So one of our hires has gotten us excellent talent at every step of the journey, right? And this is a concept for Patrick Collison of talent density, right? Which is the first 10 people you hire will get you your next 100 people, who will get you your next 1,000 people. So if you get really good, and good doesn't have to be pedigree experience from an IIT or an MIT or something. It just has to be someone who's fundamentally good at their craft and wants to improve, is willing to put in the work to get to where they have to be. You will find that that person will attract a similar person, who will attract a similar person, and so on and so forth. So in my case, the first 5 6 people coming in were people whom I had known before, had either worked with before some way or the other. And I wouldn't say the transition process is simple, right? And this is why I say, if you're starting off early as a small founding team, give yourself enough time to learn how you all work together, how you all should work, decide on what kind of a company you want to build, the sort of tooling you guys want to use, your creative process. And once you figured out a really good creative process, and creative means not just coming up with ideas, but taking something from paper, wireframes, to actual production with live customers, that is when you start ramping up your organization. So the one thing I can tell you is quite often in today's era, to deliver a really good customer experience, you do need a slightly larger team than what companies 10 to 15 years ago were shipping with, right? You may
Exactly.
want a dedicated user researcher, dedicated designer, dedicated front end engineer, because the UI is very, very important, right? This was not true 10 or 15 years ago.
So
But
what do you feel? This is because of these giants like Microsoft and Google. Actually, what I observe, they generally roll out almost all the services that exist in like some form or the other. Like many startups are doing something, they'll just compete with them directly, or offering something to. Is that the reason that you need a bigger team to handle them?
yeah, it's definitely a fascinating one, right? And I feel it's not just the fact that there are a lot more people, so your product needs to stand out, but it's also that it's the bar to building an average product has become so low that the bar to building an outstanding product has become that much higher, because
Exactly.
you not only have to ship good stuff, but you also need to stand out in the crowd, right? And that's really where engineering, design, and product has to be at a different scale altogether. So, if you try to launch a mobile app when the iPhone ecosystem was nascent, very easy for you to come in the top 10, right? In fact, what a lot of people don't realize is WhatsApp kept launching every day with a different name. That doesn't work today, right? You would not be able to execute on that. And therefore, you just have to have very strong product led growth. Just the one thing I want to just call out to people is, a lot of people use Jeff Bezos's two pizza rule for a team size. I just want to remind you that Indian Domino's two pizza is not the team size you want, right?
Exactly.
It's American Domino's two pizzas, which is probably six pizzas in India. I just like to point this out because I feel a lot of people in the ecosystem just follow what I would describe as startup gyan and take it straight from the West to India and say, "Aaj banayenge." Kya banayenge? God knows, right? But the one thing I'll tell you is, what works in the West may not work in India. So think from first principles, right?
Exactly. Like we have this question also. Someone asks that, what piece of advice would you give to, your 20 years old self? So
Okay,
anything
that's
you
that's
want to say?
that's probably me 3 years ago, right? So I can very, very easily answer this. So actually 3 years ago, I knew absolutely nothing about startups, right? My first interaction with startups when I was probably actually, yeah, when I was about 20-ish, in January, I came across an interesting video from Andreessen Horowitz about autonomous vehicles and thought, this is cool. What's going on in the tech side and insurance? The one thing that I can tell you today is, it is so easy for you to start accumulating not just experience, but something a bit more than experience by participating in the startup ecosystem. And you can see this both on the content side, on the product side. Kids out of college are doing absolutely fantastic stuff. So the one thing that I advise you is, when you think about your college extracurricular activities and even your curricular activities, right? Try to at least get 10 to 20 hours, assuming you don't need to do too much other work to meet your expenses, or if you can do both, right? Meet your expenses and get real life work experience. Try to work at a startup, right? If you're trying to look for work, get onto Twitter, get onto LinkedIn. You will find that if you can communicate crisply, if you can write well, if you can do something which is a creative discipline, right? And creative discipline means writing code, designing an interface, talking to customers, or quite frankly, even managing a social media handle or a community handle, you can start learning what it takes to run an organization, be part of an organization. And even though some of the larger employers may not give you any credit for it, it will help you a lot further in your sort of aspirations. So doing
Exactly.
that, product role at Laka straight out after college was like eye-opening experience, right? You learn a lot when you have to do a lot of stuff. So I definitely recommend that, right? Start early. I know some 16-year-olds who are already working at companies, and I just say, wow, you're 16 and you're working at companies. I was playing video games and I was 16. So small caveat there is don't put pressure on yourself, right? Everyone operates on a very different time cycle, right? So I'm 23 today, founder of a company. Maybe we've got some big investors on the cap table. Someone who's 25 and listening to this may say, shit, I'm too late. I may say the same thing seeing some guy who's 18 and in a similar situation as me. So everyone matures differently. We're on a different cycle. Enjoy the process, right? Because the outcome quite often is not in control of what you do. There's market timing. Sometimes it's, one lucky click and your product just
Exactly.
catches like wildfire, right? One big person has to drop a tweet or a LinkedIn post and boom, your whole company trajectory changes.
Exactly. That
That's
happens, even in my personal experience, I'll say that, what people generally tend to do, generally, those early founders, we can say, who are like, looking for success, and they're so hungry that, today we fail, tomorrow we succeed. They're too much busy into this that they just fail to, recognize the value of the time that they're putting in, because that's the most important part rather than the results. Because, you may do something today, it may not be valued, but you never know that, in coming few years where you may be, because there are many examples, companies sitting in dormancy and suddenly shooting out to heights like anything. Even
yeah,
Paytm came into being what we know today like this only. They were like nowhere before the demonetization, those stuff happened. So yeah, we have this question also, like, does having a prior experience provide an upper hand in team building process? Now I'll rephrase this. What do you suggest? Like, you are new to it, and I assume you don't have a lot of experience in hiring people. Like, you're not an HR guy, right? So you feel that I should hire a person to hire others? Like, you think it's
hmm
important to have an HR
yeah,
to hire others?
yeah. It's an interesting one. I would say you probably need an HR to manage people, not to recruit people. You need a technical recruiter to recruit for certain talent. But then this also goes back to the kind of team you structured, right? So I am not actively contributing to our front end code, but I'm very well versed in what we're doing on our back end. What this means is when we do try to make a front end hire, I'm present on the call. My job is purely to focus more on how are they communicating, how do they interact with the team, do you think this person can write good documents to tell what they're doing? I leave that technical assessment to other people on the team, right? You have to have that degree of trust, and
Mm,
then you run it independently by an advisory board, right? So that is something you can structure early in your company. But the one thing I can tell you is, especially if you're very, if you're not well versed in a field, then you try to find people who can help you with that recruitment process. So one of the interesting things we face right now is we're looking to get our first really senior developer because we understand the stack we're working on. We have a rough idea of where we want to go in 6 months, where we want to go in 12 months, what sort of website traffic we're hitting, why we're building what we're building. But until you can quantify what you're doing, what needs to be done, don't try to attack the senior hires, right? Because the senior hires is where you really need to put in the effort. You need to talk to people who've been in that same role. So, for example, where in the next 3 to 6 months, we're looking to hire what is not very popular in India, but it's called a senior product marketing manager. Uh,
okay.
Senior PMM sort of brings together the skill set of a senior product manager with a VP marketing, right? So, a very strong base of skills together. I have never worked with a senior PMM. No one on our team has worked with one. But the approach we're taking is we're starting early because a senior hire takes about 3 to 12 months to convert to join you. Our approach is go out there, talk to about 10 really good PMMs at bigger companies, understand what that skill set is, how they talk, what they really focus on, and that lets you as a company sort of match together what a good senior PMM would look like.
Mm.
Now, before you make the offer, just go out there, run it by your board. Chances are your board is not even going to let it pass, right? Until they vet the candidate. So the answer really is a lot of people will join you in the first 20 or 30 hires, not because they've even played around with your product, but because they like what you're doing. So going back to one of the earlier questions about building in public, right? I don't think it has really helped us acquire a lot of users, but it's definitely given us access to very, very good talent, right? Both on the technical side, which is sort of software engineering, and also more on the creative side, right? So product and design. So I'd say one of those interesting companies that has really good choices. And when we attribute where we've got the CVs from, the portfolios from, it's primarily coming from inbound, right? So it's not us actively sourcing them, they're sort of coming to us. That's probably the only place where it's really helped us so far.
So, when we talk about, startups as a whole, generally, people tend to know about startups. They really, these things are too much in demand. Rather, you can say that people, like every other person says, okay, I should do a startup, I'll be successful. So, there's been this movie, Upstarts. I've seen this. Maybe you have seen, I guess. So, what do you think, what's shown in that movie, how accurate it is, like according to your
Yeah.
experience so far?
Yeah.
What do
No,
you
no,
say?
absolutely right. So the right way to see it, and I mentioned this to one of our team members who's actually still in college, and just my lesson to this person, and they're outstanding engineer, right? Is when I was at the same sort of career sort of pathway as him, the generic advice was either go become an investment banker or become a McKinsey consultant. I think that has pretty much worn off to a point where everyone's like, become a PM at big company, right? Forget Fang, become a PM at Razorpay, become a PM at Cred, become a PM at Zerodha, Udan or something. I said, okay, that's pretty interesting. And I think they're great career paths, right? Just the one thing I'd say is doing your own thing is very, very different from being a small person, even a PM owning a feature, even owning a product at a bigger company, right? Because you will always have someone above you being able to counterbalance you, guide you, help you make a decision. Going out there, striking, solo, you with two friends, you with one friend, you alone, is a very, very different experience, right? It's all down to you. So unless you're going back to the earlier point of having clarity to make very strong conviction decisions, it's probably not for you, right? You can't be looking around for validation. Is am I doing the right thing? The answer most people will give you is, boss, you have more context than me, right? I can give you a 10,000-foot perspective on what you're doing as a business, but you'll have to make that decision, right? And it's not easy for a lot of people. It's also not easy for people at any point in their career. So just because and this is the whole, when the tide goes out, you'll figure out who's swimming naked, right? Warren Buffett's statement. Or when the music stops, everyone runs. What I can positively tell you is that a lot of people in the ecosystem who are just tourists, right? They're here because the music is playing, there's a fiesta going on. The market operates in cycles. When things turn, I'd love to see how many people are still there, right? It's not easy. You make tough decisions. You have to keep executing, keep pushing yourself. So figure it out, right? There are people who come and go, there are people who stay as well, right? If you have the conviction to stay, you may end up seeing the best of both ends, right? You learn a lot, achieve a lot. So I think it's always an ebb and flow, right? Now, all of a sudden, maybe 2 years from today, people will realize, trading options is the hot thing. So everyone will want to become a derivatives trader at
Exactly.
Goldman Sachs. So
Exactly.
it's a bit of a trend.
So, we are talking about trend right now. So, this is most of the people in startups generally talk about ideas. Like, people feel that, if my idea is awesome, if I can, this idea is something that's gonna stand out, so that's gonna take me, through. So, is it
Mhm.
true? Like, just an idea can, make you
Right.
go through
Okay.
the.
It's definitely a fascinating one, and I think the problem is people are not articulate enough on what an idea is. So an idea is not a generic statement that I am going to build X for Y in Z for M. That's not an idea, right? The
Exactly.
An idea is a very unique product or consumer or technology insight which you have, and there's a damn good reason why there is something called IP rights that exist, right? So
Exactly.
think about what the idea is. Is the idea something like a stupid statement like X for Y and Z? Go share that with everyone, right? Because what is really going to make the product click is either a unique consumer insight, a unique product insight, where product is the actual thing you're building, a unique technology insight, a unique tech insight feeds into a unique product insight, or it's a unique, as I mentioned, it's a consumer product tech distribution insight.
Mm.
4 layers to it. If it's one of those four, keep it to yourself, right? Don't need to go share it with everyone, because if it's one of those four, you should then be able to have a way to test that insight.
Mm.
And I can positively tell you, we think we have one, two, or even three of these within the company that we have gone out and tested. So it's not obvious, but this is also one of the reasons why we don't tell people where we're headed, what we're really doing. And
Mm.
sometimes it also works in your favor, right? A lot of people come to you explicitly to ask, "Bhai, tum kya kar rahe ho?" So it's good,
Exactly.
right? Remain confused. The same thing with cred, right? A lot of people initially thought cred is doing this, uh, this sort of free charge for credit cards, but they've ended up becoming the Tinkoff for India, right? So Tinkoff is this Russian challenger bank which ended up doing everything, right? They started out with mail order credit card, did debit card, did banking, did lending, did insurance, and then layered an e-commerce platform over. So Cred is doing a similar thing, right? It's like
How
a
about
ting.
Paytm? What do you say about Paytm? Actually, they are also doing almost everything, I guess. They are even
Yeah,
in the e-commerce, they are almost everywhere.
yeah. So the argument I think for Paytm is more what I would describe as economies of scope, right? And
Mm,
economies of scope means once you've incurred the CAC to acquire a customer, you just keep layering on different services or products to grow the customer lifetime value. Whereas I somehow felt, unlike Paytm, Cred was targeting a very specific demographic. And you
mm,
can say the same thing with Bharat Pay, right? So there's
mm,
a lot of emphasis on Cred with what they're doing in Tier 1 India. But I feel Bharat Pay, Cred are doing very similar plays in very different parts of India. So Bharat Pay's model is more ops heavy, foot on the ground, boss person as a trust layer. For Cred, it's more digital only trust, strong brand name. And I think
mm.
they'll both go down a similar route. So both again had unique insights there, right? And you can see that with pedigree founding teams. So
Yeah, so
that's re- yeah,
yeah, with that, like you said, that definitely there are some ideas that you think can work out. You should keep it to yourself, and others that you're even not sure, you don't even understand them. Maybe we can say you can just share it with others. But even again we have Elon Musk in the picture. But like they there was one interview where he was saying that almost all the ideas and everything what they're doing about the electric cars are in public domain, and they want others to take those ideas, build upon them. Rather, they challenge them that you build and you better than us, because they feel we are evolving faster than others can. So, what's your take on this? What do you feel
yeah.
about
I think Tesla is an interesting company. I think Tesla's biggest advantage is Elon Musk is a marketing or a meme machine, right? And what a lot of people actually don't realize is a lot of the traction Elon Musk drives for Tesla is actually worth a few $1 million per
that?
tweet, right? Because he's probably converting. I don't know, 20, 25 people with every tweet he posts to come buy a Tesla car. A Tesla
Exactly.
user has a very high lifetime value for Tesla, right? So he's probably
Exactly.
generating the company $1 million per tweet, right? That's a marketing budget. That's a marketing department. He is driving a lot of value for Tesla, and a lot of that value also sits in the intangibles, right? So
Exactly.
tangibles is what he's exposed. Intangible is not what he's exposed, right? And the intangibles of Tesla really sits in the brand, in the promise, in their design. I don't know about you, but the few times I have seen a Tesla on the road in the UK, it is a beautiful car, more so compared to a Rolls Royce or a McLaren, right? And
Exactly.
he's also probably created a bit of a cult around it. The fact that the first few Tesla owners are complete, petrol heads who will take pictures of the car everywhere, talk to everyone around it. And maybe that's where this whole starting out of the cult, a strong community, but also a community who can push it, you know, an extra mile. I think that's what Tesla has going for it. And that's maybe why Elon just doesn't care, right? I think that tweet probably got him another 50 customers. That's straight
Maybe.
$2 million to the
Um,
bank.
so what do you think about this? Like, when I generally, as a normal person, like I'm not a guru or something in anything, but when I observe the way these companies operate, maybe Tesla, maybe Microsoft, is that they began with a disruption, right? They like, you're talking about electric cars. Like, there was a time when electric cars was something that people used to say that they are toys, right? I have personally heard this,
Yeah.
this from my parents. Like, I was also interested in like having electric cars way back in 2004 and 5, and in India we were having, I guess, Riva was there. I'm not sure. So they used to be called toys, right? That person changed that perspective to today. Like, people say that just ditch your petrol diesel car and just go for an electric. So he made a transition. Like, you can say, he rather rewired his audiences to just go
Yeah.
after and love those cars. So what do you think, what is that skill that helps you do this? Because I feel once you're able to achieve this, even for Microsoft, like today Windows is the go-to operating system for everyone. Like, hardly, about 100%, 100, with the population is 100, like 80 to 85% are operating on Windows and they're happy with it. Like, they rarely know about the other parts. So how you build this thing, like how you go
Yeah.
about it?
I think it's also because a lot of people put emphasis on disruptive technology and not disrupting the market. And they're two fundamentally different things, right? You can have a really outstanding piece of technology which then helps you break a market, break everyone, and achieve light speed. But then there's also, for example, the Nintendo Game Boy, right? The guys at Nintendo were doing stuff with really old school withered technology as they explained it, right? So it's more about not only how you may have an underlying piece of technology, but disruption also sometimes sits in how you distribute the product, how you market the product, how you package and position the product. And I feel a lot of financial technology is not disruption on technology, right? With
Mhm.
no offense to most of the players out there, including Plaid, right, which is a $5 billion behemoth. There is no rocket science like a Pixel or a NASA, right? It
Right.
is it is genuinely you sitting there really thinking about how to structure a problem, how to package the APIs, how to position it, and focus on that developer experience. The same can be said with the Setu in India, right? It's building on the India stack, building a cracker developer experience. And that is disruptive, right? Sometimes because no one wants to use anything else. You crowd out the market. So you can also think about disruption in terms of positioning, packaging, distribution,
Hmm.
and that probably also works, right? Probably that's how it works for a lot of companies because especially today when a lot of the aspects of your technology stack are already pre-packaged, right? So AWS,
Hmm.
Elastic, your chat service is probably Twilio, your payments is Razorpay, Stripe, depending on where you are. You need to think creatively about what technology you're then building, right? You can argue now, uh, at least text-based artificial intelligence is also getting commoditized with GPT-3, right? We
Exactly.
have we as a company have access to it. We've played around with it. it's earth shattering, right? It's an AW, it's like an AWS for text based AI. And you suddenly realize that, wow, now that's a whole layer of computation that is
Mm,
soon going to be fully commoditized, right? It's too
exactly.
expensive to build a business on today, but people said this about AWS 15 years ago, right, or 10 years ago. So you will see, Jeffrey Moore's law kick in for almost most of the stuff, right?
Definitely.
Especially when it involves semiconductors, and that price will go on dipping. So I would more encourage people to think about disruption on the intangibles, right?
Hmm.
Not disruption on the tangibles. Tesla is really nice example of this, right? With a brand that you cannot compete with, right? Like, are you going to buy General Motors electric car? Or are you going to buy Tesla's car?
Exactly.
I
Yeah,
don't know.
it is, man. Like if I have an option, if I have something offered by Ford or someone, but if I get Tesla, man, and they are coming to India, like they're gonna be. I think it's gonna be a big boost for them because there are like at least I'm a fan of Tesla, and there are many more who are fans of it. And if they can price it properly in India, they'll rule the market. I'm damn sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, so with this, let's get to one question that our like a lot of our audience also want to listen. So it is like many of us are want to get into startups and want to get our hands dirty. So what are your tips and tricks for those people who are right now thinking about it or are already in it and maybe are in some stages of this particular process. So what's your tips or maybe your tricks for them that how they should operate, how they should hold themselves
yeah,
to
yeah. No, no,
become on.
it's definitely a good point. And if you're looking to be early stage startup operator, try to come in with a skill that is creative, right? So either write code, do UX design, do customer research, do community, just do something where you know what your strongest skill is. You're articulate about the value that you bring to a company, but then also think about why the company you want to join. You may have a reason. Actually begin with a sector, right? You will find a lot of people who want to do something in X sector, and then they drill down and see, oh, there are these interesting companies, let me go there.
Mhm.
Also think about what kind of person are you, right? Do you thrive in chaos or do you love process and structure? If you thrive in chaos, go to the early stage and burn your fingers, your hands, and everything in the process. If you love structure, you love the 200% all hands where you have some really qualified executive giving solid gyan which you can apply 10 years from today. Go to a slightly later stage entity. And the only thing I'd say is just to be conscious that every startup has a very tight set of constraints within which they operate. So you're actually more likely to hear no from a startup than from a big company,
Exactly.
right? Because as much as you make an investment of time in the company and they appreciate you for that, they are also making an investment in you. And beyond co-founder conflict, another thing which can kill a very product and technology heavy organization in the early days is to have a lot of attrition in the early team members. Because
Mm,
as an early team you have a lot of organizational knowledge, so tribal knowledge less organizational knowledge. And tribal knowledge is you all have an agreed way of working. It's not perhaps that well documented. The
mhm.
moment things get really well documented, you've hired your first 50 to 100 people, you learn how to train people up really fast. So
Plug
that's
and
what a
play there, right?
yeah, it becomes a playbook, right? But
Yeah.
until that playbook is made, right, a company has to be very careful with whom it hires, right? You have to be damn confident that someone will stick with you for at least 18 months, if not 2 years.
Hmm. So, like you have been, part of many fundraisers. So, like people have this, like a question that, if I'm gonna have to raise funds, then how should I do it? If I have to go in front of an investor and it's convince him that what I'm doing is good, or at least he can trust in me. So, what's your tips and tricks? How one should go? And because even companies having very good ideas fail to get funding. So, yeah,
Yeah.
what's your tips on?
So first thing is really be able to articulate why you're raising the money. In my case, it was fairly clear. Direct to consumer fintech is a tank battle. If you're looking to have a great team, great product, you are going to have to endure a certain number of years, if not months, where you will not be able to generate sufficient revenue. Insurance, you have to sometimes batter the customers with a great experience for a long time before they convert. So for our case, the rationale behind raising was solid. Many chances are you're running a solid direct to consumer e-commerce or community led business. You can easily hit 250K ARR, which for those of you wondering is 250,000 US dollars to you a year in your pocket, then minus expenses. You do not need to raise money for those kind of businesses. And there are lots of really successful ones, including content companies, right? Because quite often, if you have a content company and you have a trickle of revenue coming in, or a community led company and a trickle of revenue coming in, you'll see a network effect. Now, if you're in a network effect business, either you need to raise really fast because you have to outcompete, or you just do not have to raise because you grow so exponentially fast. The final bit on how to go about raising it, everyone's experience very different. My experience very different from everyone else out there, and I got lucky. Couple of early conviction checks coming in, raised fair bit to start off with very pedigree investors. Just the one thing I would say is, do not undershoot, right? Don't say person X or fund X will not invest in me because of Y reason. Give it a shot, right? Because anyways, the odds of someone saying yes are 1 out of 100. That's how their business operates.
Mm-hmm.
But for a lot of businesses, you can show traction and revenue even before you raise your first bit of money. So, in direct to consumer fintech and in fintech in general, the expectation is investors are happy to pummel money into your company before anything is ready.
Mm-hmm.
And this is because the size of the ultimate TAM is so large that you can afford to place those kind of bets.
Exactly.
If you're doing something really out of the box, and I'm not saying fintech is out of the box, right? A lot of stuff we do is also completely crazy for investors. But if you're doing something fundamentally where the investor has not heard, not seen company, unsure of market size, take that as an advantage, right? You can actually generate sufficient business volume, sufficient traction before going to them. But whatever you do, the moment you begin a fundraise cycle, you want to show something called forward momentum. And
Mm-hmm.
forward momentum means any form of progress in the company, right? Either it's business metrics, there could be revenue, could be users, could even be users spoken to, or how much progress you're making on the product, right?
Mm-hmm.
There is enough capital in the ecosystem. There are not enough, forget good ideas, right? There are not enough people who are executing well enough, building good companies, and you can stand out there, right? So start early. If you are looking to raise in September, you should
Mm-hmm.
have started something which attracts people to you yesterday, right?
Mm-hmm.
A really good example of this is today you can almost think of stuff as uh, content, community, commerce, right? So start to get some content in, create a community around yourself. You will find a commerce led revenue stream if you just want the simplest way to start. And you
Yeah,
can see
that's
this,
what
right?
YouTube is all about, I guess. These days, if you just go on YouTube, there are so many big players out there. They are just getting revenue from being, just having reach to people. That's all what they have, and they are just, turning into cash flow. So even that is the
Exactly.
business we have these days. But with this, you're in an initial company, right? And if we talk about that, you have a weird idea, and you rightly said, it's very hard that someone gonna invest money in it. Like if we take the example of the SpaceX kind of stuff, at that time when those guys were planning that they're gonna make a rocket company, and like I don't think anybody would have it. Even the government wasn't ready, right? So those guys put in the money what they made from Tesla. So what do you agree with this approach that if I have something big planned, which I know that today it's something that hard to explain to anyone, should I take a simpler route, try to generate revenue so I can fund it from my own pocket for some time, and then I can push it to the investor that, hey, see, this is working and come join me. What do you
The
say?
the the obvious thing is, the Tesla SpaceX actually survived the early years on government grants, right? That's something no one actually discusses.
Mm-hmm.
So the one thing I'd say is if you're looking to build a business in one of those kind of areas, which is hard tech, as you know, like the good old where you're setting up your own infrastructure like a Pixel, like a SpaceX, etc., you probably want to have something which makes people willing to invest in you, right? So Elon could just go there. He'd probably already deposited a few $1 million into his angel investors bank, and he's
Mm-hmm.
just taking a small amount out of that, right? For
Exactly.
example, with the guys at Pixel and a lot of the current space tech company, they've either already demonstrated an ability to execute at a very high level in the domain, or they have the credibility to raise, right? So also
Mhm.
think about what kind of a business you're in and why you're in that business, or why are you the right person for that business. And quite often in the hard tech industry, you have to be a caliber of founder or founding team that can potentially go 3 years without revenue, 3 years sometimes raising your follow round of financing with no revenue, little traction, no contract. So very different set of industries, right? I would say I don't know enough of those to comment on them. But
Yeah, but like you talk about our own country, right? Right now, there's a mindset of the government. They want to invest in these things, like the rocket or these kind of like they are running. They are asking that come join us. We want to do it. So, what
yeah,
do you feel? This is the right time for those kind of businesses to go to government and say, "Hey, we have this idea. Come on, help us out." What do you think? Or
yeah. So
maybe,
so I am a little split on the whole government investing in startups, just because we've seen how in countries like Poland and other European nations, government dabbling in startups can have very bad results, right? Government dabbling in startups, you can see it with Ant Financial, right? Things go bad, you just get
exactly.
shut down. The the one thing I'd say is look at the kind of industry it is, right? You probably want ISRO's help if you're trying to do some satellite stuff in India. If you're looking to sell autonomous drones which are going to fire 1,000 rounds a minute, you probably want to work with the government of India, right? Or the US government. Very dependent on what sector you're operating in. I mean, for me, I probably just need the IRDA brokerage license and I'm good, right?
That's
Uh,
all.
uh,
Huh?
as long as I'm not acting like some brands which go and stick the prime minister's picture with their logo without prior consent, I think it's
It's
okay.
better to stay away, right?
Yeah.
Keep
So
the.
you want to just think about how does government affiliation help you?
Yeah,
In
definitely.
in many cases, it probably doesn't, right? Because countries tend to be in a democracy as well. You tend to be split along how many people like or dislike a government. I'm not
Mhm.
taking sides, but more so today, right? So if you are a fintech company and you put a minister there or a minister of opposition there is always someone who's going to be offended by you, and you might as well just try to not offend anyone by avoiding it, or you could just offend someone by not having them. Another problem.
You need to look out for all this, right?
Yeah,
So, yeah, okay. So, along with this, as you said that to for the initial success, you need to have that cohesion within the team members, right, to come together and work as a unit to achieve, right? So, you being the CEO, the founder, and it's your responsibility to keep them together, right? So, how you do this? Like, how hard is it, and how you make that happen? How you ensure that each and every member is giving his 100% or her
Mhm.
100% towards your company and even feeling satisfied also. That's a
Yeah,
big challenge. Yeah.
yeah. It's a difficult one to answer, and I think your job as a CEO in the team meetings is more to act like the coach of the football team or the coach of the cricket team. So you sit there, you ask people the questions with the objective of bringing out their concerns, their learnings, their feedback. You also want to be the kind of person who will give the quiet people a voice. So you will ask people to shut up and ask the one person in your company who's really quiet to open their mouth, share their thoughts. You want to act more as a mediator as well in the company. I think you also want to you want to encourage people to actively raise conflicting views, but then also be the person who drives to a common decision with an end point, with a time scale to execute and a reason for it. So It's not easy. You learn how to do it because different companies are different. I'd say
Mhm.
at least at BimaPe, people seem to get along. There are obviously arguments, discussions. You try to avoid more of the disputes, more of a debate. There's a fine line between you. Dispute is like just because you said it, I'm going to say something. Debate is more, look, we want to get to a positive outcome. Let's hear each other out, make a decision. The bottom line is again making a decision, right? You make the decision, drive that, and say, look, if this doesn't work, we'll try something else, and here's why. That's one thing to do. The other thing is you want to make it a cross functional process early, right? So right from the point where you're drawing up the wireframes, talking to customers, get different stakeholders in the room, right? Get engineering in early. Make sure it's not just the product manager talking. Bottom line is you want people in the company who have strong opinions, but you also want to make sure they're strong opinions that are quote unquote loosely held. So you're happy to
Exactly.
be corrected, you're happy to take an experimental approach. But one of the things you'll also learn is discipline, right? So the awkward thing is we're coming up at 7 p.m. and I know I have a customer call. So even though I'm loving the call, the interesting thing is I will say something like, I will say something like, look, we've got the customer call, I have to jump. And the one thing I'll tell you is sacrifice, right? You'll be amazed how much of a sort of thing you have to do both as a team and as an individual to get to where you are. So it's I'd say a lot of it in the early days is founder led, right? But you also want to try to make sure a lot of this happens without you. So part
Mhm.
of being a founder is also realizing when you need to shut your mouth and let people do things. It happens on customer calls with me where I've been trying to answer every insurance question, but I've now consciously said, how do I build this company for a situation where if I get hit by a truck tomorrow, these guys are not dependent on me? And that means shutting up, listening to how people in your team talk, taking notes, and giving them feedback. Your biggest sort of role as a founder, even if you're younger than people, and there are people in the team who are older than me, is to say, look, the day you join the companies, we're all here to improve ourselves, improve the product, get to an outcome. You are going to have to be comfortable with me telling you, look, this was good because of this was not good because of that. And unless you're comfortable being open with your thoughts about how someone's progressing, how the company is progressing, you're headed nowhere.
So
We could
that's
probably do, yeah.
like when you are building an organization, the organization is itself nothing but the group of people that you have. Everyone should be, the organization should portray everyone together, maybe. So that's great. So, last question for our session today. Like I really enjoyed, having it. So, yeah, this is, like what's according to you, like you are in the insurance sector, so what do you feel, what's the future of this? Like, you are really, trying to make it more and more digitalized and, reach people directly. So what do you feel that in next coming 3 to 4 years or maybe 5 years, where this thing gonna go, where we'll be? Like, today we are just using an app to just get everything's done. So what do you feel, what's the vision you think that in next 5 years where this whole industry gonna go?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So that's it. I'm less sort of focused on the delivery mechanism, right? And delivery mechanism is an agent, a bank, online on the desktop or online on the phone. But I'm more focused on the access and the size of the market, right? Because that really drives a lot of what happens. I think 2010 was all about getting people in India to get into payments. 2015 was all about getting people onto the personal finance, stocks, mutual fund bandwagon with SIP. I think 2020 to 2025 will be the same sort of analogy for insurance, right? Is you've now got onto payments, you've now got an identity, you've now got a bank account, you've now started saving. Savings takes you to where you could be in a good scenario. Insurance sort of caps your downside. And I think that's what's going to happen next, right? So you've got everything. Insurance is the final piece in the puzzle. Hopefully becomes like a UPI style moment for insurance as well in the country.
And with a single tap you can get everything, maybe that could be, great.
Yeah.
And Great time saving. So yeah, with that, guys, we come to end of this session, and I really enjoyed having this session with Rahul, and he went really in details. Like, I really learned a lot as well. So I hope I guys you guys also learned the same, and I will we'll try to have such sessions again. And till then, guys, I'll see you next time in the next session. So before we go, let's quickly go to our guest, and let's hear from him the final words before he leaves. Yeah.
Okay. I guess it probably depends on who you are, but if you're listening to this, there is never like an easy way to see whether or not you're a good founder or not. If you want to build something, go out there, build it. Don't talk about it. You can talk about it to users with the objective of building, but unless you give it a shot, you'll never know how good or bad you are. And there's never like a good or bad, right? There are people who tried and there are people who didn't try to make sure you're in that bunch that did try, right? That's my only sort of message to you.
Yeah. So with that, guys, we close this session, and I'll see you in the next session of Let's Talk series.